in-house, who's our external member. Good to see you here. ADC staff, including people zooming in. Members, now should be only one member of the press sitting down in the back, thank you. No public, but people might following this live from home. So welcome to the Audit and Risk Committee from the 23rd of March 2022. Apologies, do we have any?
Just one from
Liz?
the Mayor.
Okay, we've got the Mayor. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Stuart and John, thank you. If you want to vote, please say aye. Thank you. Extraordinary business. I don't know of any. None. Declarations of interest. None. Then we go to the minutes. Point 4, Audit and Risk Committee from the 9th of February 22. And thank you, John, for taking it while I was away. Are there any corrections to be made or any questions? None? Do we have some trouble with?
Yeah.
Okay. What is not going?
I've got a message from Sarah. I don't know whether it went to anybody, but she can't hear now.
But we can't fix it in the middle of the
Okay.
No.
Okay, so we just carry on as it is. Carolyn.
I'm just going to move that we accept the minutes.
Just, you need to speak into our microphone.
Oh, use your microphone if you can, Carolyn. Yeah. Carolyn moves that, that the minutes are true and correct. John?
I'll second.
Thank you. We've got a mover and a seconder. Everyone in favour, please say aye. Nice. Carried. Reports. Point 5. Experience Mid-Canterbury 2018-19 Audited Annual Report. Starting on page 5. What do I get here? John.
I'd just like to know where the actual audit report is.
Paul, do you know anything about it?
It was supposed to be attached to the actual report, but
Okay.
sorry if it hasn't been. But it was a qualified audit report because it wasn't prepared. It was still prepared on a going concern basis when audit believed it shouldn't have been. So we effectively accepted the qualification.
Okay, thank you for that.
But I can get that report, the actual set of accounts sent to with the audit report attached.
That would be great, thank you for that. Is this the last one from Mid-Canterbury, or is there more to come?
There will be a 2019-20 set of accounts.
Still to come. Do you know when? No.
No, I don't.
No idea. Okay.
The reality of this audit was that there was a lot of issues with it. There were some tax issues that EMC had to sort out, and then it got overtaken by, I suppose, the audit resourcing issue where they prioritised, and probably rightly so, central government and local government audits, and therefore this one, because it couldn't meet its original timeframe, simply slipped down the list and was done when it could be. So, yeah, I'm not sure what the timing is of the next set of accounts.
Thank you. Liz.
Thank you. Through the chair, so the $33,000 that's been set aside, is that just for this audit or for both of the audits, and is that enough to cover everything?
Through Jim, that's to cover all outstanding costs. Whether it's going to be enough, I don't know. I haven't seen the estimates yet for the final audit because it hasn't been done, so I don't know whether it's going to be enough or not. Hopefully it will be.
Supplementary, so who picks up the costs if it's not enough?
The shareholder will pick up the cost, the council.
Lovely.
Okay, thank you, Liz. John.
And presumably, if there is any surplus funds, they will come back to the shareholder as a capital dividend.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you for that. Any more questions? None? We've got a recommendation on page 5. John? Sorry, Stuart.
I'll move the audit
Okay.
receive the report.
Thank you. Stuart is moving it. John?
Second it.
Thank you. Everyone in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Point 6. Michael, you've got the floor. This is on page 8. Let's start on page 8. Michael, you want to speak to it for a start and explain exactly what it all is? Or things you want to mention?
Thank you, through the chair. So this is our biannual IN's audit report to see if we're complying with all the regulations that are set out in the Building Act. As you can see, we had 10 minor non-compliances. All were sort of admin type non-compliances, so there was nothing found during our technical side of the audit. So all our buildings that we're consenting and inspecting and signing off are actually, up to code. The 10 non-compliances, we fixed 4 of them during the audit before the auditors left, and we've got till the 1st of April to come up with a plan for the outstanding 6, and by the end of May to have them all signed off.
Great. Are there any questions for Michael? John?
First of all, comment and just congratulations to your team for doing such a good job as far as the consents are concerned. I mean, basically these guys are auditors. They've got to find something. They'll find something very minor and hang their clothes on it type of thing. But I think as far as you're concerned, you've done an excellent job. I note that you've got till the 22nd of May or whatever it is to get all of these non-compliances. Will they be completed by that stage?
Absolutely.
Mike, just a question. So what is a major one, if you would have had that one? You've got small ones, but...
The major non-compliance would be not following a procedure,
Okay.
not having a procedure, or ineffective implementation of a procedure.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any more questions? Gee, we're going well here. Do we've got a mover and a seconder for the recommendations on page 8. Carolyn, you moved the recommendation as stands. And we've got Liz.
I'll
seconder.
second.
Okay. We've got a mover and a seconder. Everyone in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Michael. Thank you. It's been a busy day for you. Twice. Thank you. And well done. Point 7, Ashburton Contracting Limited Draft Statement of Intent 22-23. Paul, you talk to that?
Yes, I can, Jim. This is the proposed draft statement of intent for the 22-23 year. It's exactly the same as it was in the previous year, and we need to go back to them with any comments or changes that we would like to request, and then they will adopt their statement of intent before the start of the new financial year. But as I said, it's exactly the same as it was the current SOI.
That's what I thought too when I was reading it. Are there any questions or changes to be made, councillors? Any comments to be made? Stuart?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. We reduced the amount of capital that they paid back to us, the dividend.
Yep.
Things are a bit more buoyant. Is there any opportunity to increase the percentage that we expect from them?
Paul, you want to reply to that?
Well, the statement of intent is to pay 50% of the net after-tax return. You could ask them to increase that, but you won't know for the year that this relates to what the performance of the company will be. So remember, this is for the 22-23 year, starting 1 July. So they've had a good year this year, but this is for the following year. They can pay more, and talking to them, if it's a really good year, we could ask them to pay more. But this is really just saying you need to maintain at least 50%.
Stuart?
Supplementary, is there a position in the agreement that we sign with them, that if they do have a good year, we can ask them for a bigger percentage, or is it once you sign the long-term agreement for the coming year, that's locked in?
No, that's a discussion that you can have with the company. If you look at their performance and it warrants you think a bigger payout, then you can have that discussion with the company. They're not locked into only paying X percent. We're the shareholders, so we can have those discussions with them.
So when would you have those discussions if it comes to the final?
When it comes to preparing budgets for us, or when it comes to them paying out their interim or final dividends. So they pay an interim dividend in about March of each year, and a final dividend that comes through in about October or November. So they're the discussions you could have. And we do have those discussions with the council does have the discussions with ACL on the dividend size.
Correct. Are there any more questions? Oh, Derek, how are you? Good to see you. Right, so no more questions. Oh, John, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just coming back to goodwill and the impairment of goodwill, and it gives us full details about how we assess any impairment goodwill, the same as recoverable amounts. All of the other policies say where there is a difference, particularly to the impairment of assets or something like that.
John, which page are you looking at?
Oh, sorry, page 62.
Okay, thank you.
Where there's an impairment to the value of assets, then any impairment or gain will be taken back through the P&L account. Yet there's no reflection of that as far as any changes in the value of goodwill. Should there be, or where does any change in the value of goodwill get reflected?
Through Mr. Chairman, I think the changes in goodwill goes through the P&L as well, I believe, but I'll need to check that. It doesn't specifically say that, but I believe that's where it gets treated.
That's what I would assume, but as I say, the policies are quite specific as far as changes to other assets concerned, but they don't actually state it in goodwill.
We could ask them to be more specific on where the goodwill impairment, if one occurs, is treated. So we could ask them to add to that goodwill clause that clarify how that would be treated.
Would you like to have it in, John, or?
Well, I think we've got it as far as other assets and liabilities are concerned, so it only makes it more complete if we have it as far as goodwill is concerned. So I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. You want to put a motion following that? You can make.
Through Mr. Chairman, I can simply take those views back to. I can take those views back to ACL and ask them to do that probably without a motion.
Okay. You happy with that, John? If you leave it like that. Okay. Yes, Paul. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah. Murray?
Oh, I was just going to ask a question, sorry.
Yeah, you go for it. Yep.
No, I was going to go back to the dividend policy discussion, so maybe you want to close that one off first. No?
Yeah, that's done.
Just in terms of the dividend policy, how involved is the conversation on the 50% of after-tax return? I mean, we could make $1,000 profit and it's 500, or we could make $1 million profit and it's 500,000. I guess it's a question for Paul in the first instance. What's the conversation between, and maybe council's involved, and I'm not because of my more limited role, but what's the council Ashburton contracting conversation around the strategy of what's looking to be achieved, the signalling for the organisation and for council in terms of how the two work together in terms of the sustainable dividend flow, if you like, because 50% could be anything from $1 to X million dollars depending on profit. So it was really just a understanding of what the strategy and philosophy is around that in a longer term sense.
Thank you. John or Paul, did you hear that?
Did you want me to answer that, or did Hamish want to answer that?
Either or.
Right, yeah.
Well, I can start. Generally speaking, it relates to the all the needs of the company. So we know they have capital expenditure needs around replacing plant and equipment, and we want to support them in having modern, efficient equipment. It will depend on the amount of the surplus or the profit as you infer. It can include our own budgetary pressures and what might be an appropriate support back from the company. So it's a round table kind of conversation around what's good for ACL and what's good for the shareholder. And in the end, the company tries to do the best thing by the company, taking into account those conversations. Does that sort of answer it?
Yeah, I think, and broadly speaking, it does. It's just, I guess I've seen examples where there's a floor on what's attempting to be paid each year, so the council knows what it's trying to, what it's looking to achieve as a minimum versus the contracting company and what they're looking to pay, just to put a bit of tension into it. And I think we might have had this conversation last year, and you might have a good reason for saying it. The 50% to me feels, I accept the spirit of the conversation with a 100% owned subsidiary, but 50% kind of feels a wee bit loose in terms of doesn't put any tension in terms of what the profit objective might be to get to a dividend back to council, because 50% is 50% of whatever the number is. So I was just sort of thinking about, how do you actually apply pressure? I guess that's a board of ACL type role, but how does the shareholder put a bit of tension into that conversation to get the best outcome?
I'll go to Hamish first and then Paul after, if you can.
Yep.
In the time I've been here, our experiences with ACL, perhaps I could reflect on two respects. One is their profitability very much reflects the market that they operate in. So they strive to maximise their profitability in the market conditions in which they operate. And we recall prior to COVID, when things had slowed right down and the future was so uncertain, they were talking to us about their concerns around profitability. Since then, the economy has done an about turn and operates in a very different way, and they talk quite openly with us around how the company is performing. So, and secondly, I guess the point is that they understand, and they are a commercial board, and they understand the desirability of long-term sustainable profitability. So they are always trying to balance how much money they might make, what is available to their shareholder, and how they need to reinvest in the business so they can have an ongoing successful year. I don't know there's a lot more tension we can put into that relationship to demand greater profitability, if you like. The conversations are open. They report to the council on a quarterly basis. Now, the relationship is strong with their board and executive, and I think there is a very clear understanding that the company has of the shareholders' expectations around a sustainably profitable business.
I guess, I'm just aware of an example where there is a minimum put into this sort of terminology such that at least the council's got a degree of certainty, and it puts a bit of a stick in front of the board to achieve a certain result. I accept it's a contracting business, but so is the other one I'm talking about, and I'm just wondering if that conversation has been had or whether it's not really the culture in which you want to operate.
Okay.
Well, I'm not sure we'd ever want to have a number such that they would borrow to pay a dividend, for example, so they can.
Then you would agree not to pay it.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
just really to set a bit of a target for them to aim at, and then the exception would be they come and have a conversation and you waive it for that year, rather than this feels a wee bit kind of loose comparatively. That was all. So the fallback position is there is a dividend to be paid of X, and you can almost contract out if it were, rather than the other way around.
Yeah, I just called to Paul. Paul, you've got anything to put in?
When we budget for the coming year, we always budget for a dividend for ACL, and they know what that is, because I generally tell them what we are actually budgeting.
Right.
So when they have their quarterly meetings, there's always a focus from the council side of early warning if that budgeted amount of dividend is at risk.
Right.
So we could formalise it more than that, but they generally know when we budget how much we're budgeting for, say, for next year from them.
So you're essentially saying you're doing what I'm asking. It's just it's not written down here.
Yeah.
That it could be formalised more and we could actually every year when we do our budget, formally write to them and say we've prepared our budget on the basis that we will receive X from you, instead of me just advising them verbally, because I'm not sure how far up the company that goes, but they certainly, when we have our quarterly meetings, if the dividend's at risk, it's covered off because the councillors are always got their eye on that dividend.
Okay, well, I don't think it's for me to kind of say what it should look like. It's really just trying to provide some thoughts as to what goes on in some other places.
Are you quite happy the way we're doing it, or you want to have it more structured?
I'd be interested in councillors' thoughts rather than just me as an independent, because you understand the community and the culture of the...
Okay, we just go to John. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think as far as dividend policy is concerned, we always need to be aiming for something. And what we've got here is what I call an aim for. It's not necessarily what we're going to get, because I take into account two parts of what is said here: to maximising the long-term sustainable distribution flow to the shareholder. So that's the first thing that's got to be taken into account. And the second one is the last sentence: any distribution needs to be prudent in the circumstances and meet solvency tests. So to me, we've got protection in there as far as the dividend is concerned. So the only other way you could change it, and picking up on Murray's point, is that it's got to be 50% where the after-tax profit is a certain minimum figure type of thing. But I'm sure I look upon dividends as being part of CapEx, and what you pay as part of dividend is the same as what you're paying in new machinery and that sort of thing, although new machinery should be paid out of your depreciation and loan fund. So, as I say, I'm quite happy with the dividend policy, but I do pick up on Paul's point. Perhaps we do need to write to the board saying what we expect, rather than just doing it by word of mouth, and then we've got it, down in writing.
Okay. You want to make that a motion? Put it in motion?
Someone wants to put in
No,
Or Stuart?
well, I had a question and a comment.
Okay, we go to Stuart first and then we come back.
As long as the council appoints the directors of the company and the personnel represent mainly local people, I've got confidence that they will work for the benefit of the district as well as the council.
To be honest, I'm quite happy the way it's been discussed. I can hear all the sides, but I think what we've got in the moment seems to work for us. Is that the feel? Is it correct that all the councillors are similar? Liz?
Yeah, thank you. I'd agree. I think it's worked so far, and I'm happy with it.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Murray. It was a good discussion. Paul, you want to say anything about it?
When I go back to ACL on the other matter of goodwill, I might, with council's approval, raise this issue with them and say that possibly they could change the wording of that dividend statement to say, and endeavour to meet council's budgeted dividend amount for that year, or something like that. But I'll raise the issue with them and just say that it was discussed. That's okay. They may be able to come up with some wording themselves that might move that along.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. Angus?
Mr. Chair, my question to you is, what is the meaning of formally in the number 2 part of the resolution where it says the council formally? What is the meaning taken from that word formally?
Paul, you want to say anything about it?
That really just means that we will write to them,
Correct.
advising the ACL board of any comments that we've made, especially any requests for changes. But we'll formally put that in writing to them, that we've considered the SOI and this is the result of our consideration.
Thank you, Paul. Everyone happy here and all councillors happy with what we're doing and discussing? Thank you. We've got a recommendation on page 46 that the Audit and Risk Committee receives the Ashburton Contracting Limited 22-23 draft statement of intent and refers it to the Council for approval. Point 2, that Council formally advises the ACL Board of any comments on the draft statement of intent before the 28th of April 2022. We've got Stuart Overgett.
I'll move both recommendations.
And John seconded. Yep. Everyone in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you all. This is the end of the open meeting. And we go to in public. Liz, you.